myself and my colleague Emma Pierce from University of Hertfordshire. And for those who don't know me, I'm Colleen. I'm from University of Bedfordshire, both of us working for Spire Hire. We're going to be managing your questions during the session. And so feel free to put questions as we go along in the chat, and there'll be plenty of opportunity at the end for Paul to answer your questions as best he can. We had a lot of pre-event questions that we were very excited to see, which I've forwarded to him as well. Still admitting a few people in, and I'll let also I just want to let you know that we will be sending round an evaluation as well at the end, and we'll be putting up a Padlet where you can put your comments as we go along. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Paul Thompson, who's going to talk about South East Midlands and labour market information. And take it away, Paul.
Hi, can I just confirm that you can see the slides and you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, that's a good start then. That's a good start. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I saw quite a few names flashing up on the screen as you were kind of coming in. So I know a lot of you know me already, but just to explain that my name is Paul Thompson. I'm the Employment and Skills Manager for this organisation called the South East Midlands Local Enterprise Partnership. Basically, LEPs are there to actually drive economic development within a geographic area. Our geographic area is Northamptonshire, Milton Keynes, Bedfordshire and Luton. So it's quite a big area. We've got about 886,000 people in employment, and last year we had about 165,000 job postings. The year before we had 167,000 job postings, so it didn't go down that much, which might come as a surprise to a lot of people, bearing in mind what we've been through. But I'll take you through how it's kind of shaped up, etc. Now, I did get a load of questions before this. Hopefully I've answered most of those in the slides you're about to see. There are a couple that aren't in the slides, and hopefully I'll touch on those as we kind of go through. You will get a copy of the slides as well, and we also have a version of this which is aimed primarily at younger people, so a bit more condensed, not so kind of statistically driven as this one. So just to kind of show you the landscape at the moment, employment, despite everything, has continued to rise during last year. Now, I know you will have heard about redundancies, etc., and bits and pieces, and there have been more redundancies, but the actual employment level has remained fairly robust. Now, this second and third lockdown will undoubtedly have an impact. There's no question about that. So we will start to see a few redundancies, and this will probably slow down. The employment rate has been fantastic. We're one of the highest in the country, which poses its own challenges for businesses because they're fighting over a very competitive labour market. Most of the growth that you can actually see within that area, a lot of it's been in Northamptonshire, but Milton Keynes and Central Beds in particular have been very, very kind of robust. And if you look at the job density, if you've got a number over there that's over 1, that means there's more jobs than working age population. So that would explain why you can't get into Milton Keynes in the morning. There's a lot of people travelling in to work, similar with Northampton as an area. We're 0.88. England is 0.87, so we've got rural areas where it's less so, but so it's quite a healthy labour market, certainly pre-COVID. We have seen a slowdown on job postings, on job vacancies kind of coming out, and there has been a kind of shift within that in the type of kind of job postings. We're kind of around about 70% of where we were at the peak before COVID-19. So, it's kind of getting back up there, and the trend certainly over the last few weeks has been quite positive. So you're seeing monthly figures there. You'll see the way it kind of was dropping down anyway during 2019. It picked up at the beginning of 2020. Then what hit us with the first lockdown, big slowdown. Then we started to come back out of it again, and it was coming up quite nicely. And then we've had the second and third lockdown. So that slowed that down a bit, but the indications are that it will recover fairly quickly, certainly in this area. We have the types of businesses that are anticipated to grow quicker. So one of the questions certainly I had was about apprenticeships. Yeah, apprenticeship starts are down. They are a job at the end of the day. And so, you know, if people aren't recruiting, then they won't be recruiting apprenticeships. It was actually down about 2,000 compared with the previous year, about 20%. Level 4 plus kind of held up quite well, but I have to say a lot of those are apprenticeships for people already within work and upskilling and reskilling. So, you know, the apprenticeships, you know, this is common, but national picture, by the way. In fact, the national picture is much worse. You know, they will recover, they will come back again, and certainly we have an apprenticeship ambassador network where we talk to large businesses. They're quite optimistic, actually. So I think it will bounce back fairly quickly. There are some financial incentives for businesses to do that, which will help. They're not enough, but they will help. Similarly with traineeships as well. So we'll see what kind of impact that has. The kind of roles kind of pre-COVID and during COVID that are in demand have changed very little. If it's yellow on both sides of this table, then there's no change really. So on the right hand side, you've got a whole year pre-COVID, and on the left hand side, you've got the last 90 days from the 22nd of February. The green ones are new to the top 25. So this is the top 25 job postings that are out there. So you'll see some things in there, like warehouse inventory, production workers, that kind of thing, teaching assistant, financial managers. You know, there's some things that there are shortages of that have kind of risen up the list quite quickly. If you actually look in the top 200, there is certainly more healthcare, digital, logistics jobs. And then if you actually look at new roles that have come into that top 200, again, there's digital and medical, but there's also an awful lot of construction. And I'll talk more about that later on. So if you actually look at 2020 compared with 2019 and the comparison, you'll see that there's been a big shift in the type of occupational groups. Now, what we do here, what I mean by occupational groups, is we group together a whole bunch of jobs, etc., that go into certain kind of businesses, and we class them as occupational groups. So the logistics one you see at the top there is logistics specific. So it's things like drivers, warehouse staff, that kind of thing. You've got health and care is way up there, digital, education, service, social services, all made a kind of positive growth on terms of job postings. Down the bottom end, you know, business operations. So these are kind of operations supporting business. You can imagine a lot of people working from home, so you don't need those things anymore at that stage. Sales kind of relates more to kind of retail, but there's also retail specific in there as well. You'll see food and accommodation as well was well down. Manufacturing dropped down, but again, I'll talk more about that in a minute because that's all of a sudden very buoyant and coming back again. So we've done recently, there's a new skills strategy, funny enough, that got signed off on Friday, which we're just kind of publishing and going to have available. The work that we've done with employers, we've been speaking to employers for the last 18 months, and certainly looking to the future, this is where the kind of need is going to be. These are the occupational groups we need. So engineering and manufacturing, digital and business operations and management, and within that are the kind of things that help and support a business. So you'll see the ones listed there, but you could also include in that human resources, purchasing, that kind of thing. Now, again, we're talking about these occupational groups because they cut across so many different sectors and there's so many different needs. There are some which are a bit more sector specific, and certainly health and care is one of the big areas, education, logistics specific and supply chain, and as I've already mentioned, construction. There are big needs, big requirements there, and that's anticipated to carry on for the near future. Looking further ahead, if you look at these occupational groups, they will kind of take us into these kind of areas. So whilst the roles and the skills might change a little bit within these occupational groups, provided we are employer led with all of this, and it's the employers informing us as to what skills, etc. we want, we should be okay if we focus more towards these occupational groups. So this is where the need's going to be. You've got things like artificial intelligence in here, aerospace. I should also say that there's probably going to be quite a bit of space technology in the area as well. Certainly demand with satellites, etc., and that's expanding into the area. High-tech manufacturing, intelligent mobility, the green economy, health and care with the introduction of digital support systems within that, modern methods of construction. So you'll start to see a little bit of a shift away from brick because, you know, it's time consuming, needs lots of skill sets. What you'll see is a lot of more houses actually built off site and put together kind of on site. Agriculture technology. We are not too far away from having fields with nobody in them, but a tractor trundling around doing its job. And in fact, there's already fields and test sites kind of around here that are actually already doing that, using drones to actually kind of survey kind of crops and all kinds of things. And then on the logistics side, again, that's moving ahead quite quickly. Certainly the local delivery type logistics. Some of you, certainly in Milton Keynes, and they're starting to come out in Northampton now and a few other places. Might have seen the little units trundling around delivering stuff, but drones is the next thing. And a lot of stuff is going on at Cranfield University with research on that. So again, when we've been talking to these employers over the last 14, 18 months, skills is really what they talk about, employability skills. I have to say, it's very rare that we end up in a conversation with an employer that will talk about qualifications. Now, it's not to say they're not important, they are, but it's, you know, it's interesting where the employer's focus lies. And, you know, for those of you who know me, I've been banging on about this for quite some time, and not a lot has changed, to be honest with you. Basic skills is one of the kind of kingpins. Attitudes and behaviours is another one. We've included empathy in that one because that one comes up quite a bit in the health and care side, as you can imagine. We've then got the core competencies, and by far this is the most important area. So communication skills, organisational skills, teamwork, collaboration comes up, you know, more than often in any kind of sector that we look at. Technical and vocational skills, I mean, obviously aligned to where we've got need on the occupations, and then qualifications, as I say. One of the things that's come out of that as well is that the increasing importance of digital skills, and obviously COVID-19's really just confirmed that. And again, there are three levels: basic skills. So can you turn a computer on? Can you get to your bank account? And I have to say, for the majority of young people, this is not an issue. One of the issues that might be is digital poverty. And that's something that we're trying to address, trying to get that balance right. Digital literacy, and this is probably by far the most important area in most jobs. So this is Microsoft Office primarily, but it does include some business systems and a few other bits and pieces. And then we get into the specialist digital skills. Now, these are related specifically to a type of job. So it could be programming, it could be digital design, creativity, cybersecurity, that kind of thing. If we actually look at what's actually being asked for on the job postings, if you look at the digital literacy, Microsoft Excel exceeds everything by a long way. There are very few jobs today that you will go into that you will not use Microsoft Excel. And I have to say, our skill sets of our young people aren't particularly good on this. We have had some conversations with head teachers about this. We do need youngsters applying it and using it, because I don't know about you guys, but certainly the way I've learned Microsoft Office is usually somebody stood on my shoulder saying, "What are you doing it that way for, you idiot?" You know, you learn by using it. You can go on courses, of course, but the more you can actually get young people to use this, the better it will be for them, that's for sure. On the specialist skill side, not a lot's changed since we kind of last showed these slides. SQL, C#, JavaScript, .NET remain the main programming languages that are out there being used. SAP and Oracle are the two business systems. Now, we wouldn't expect any young person to come out of education knowing how to use SAP and Oracle. They will be taught that within a business, but it's just awareness that those things actually exist. There's a few other specialist ones in there. You'll see AutoCAD for design, things like Facebook for marketing, and that seems to be coming, especially with the smaller businesses. a bigger demand for people to kind of come into their organisations and help them with their certainly social media and marketing. So that's where a young person can really add value to a business, especially if they've got knowledge of that. So if we look at the occupational groups independently now, so what I'll do is I'll take you through each one and I'll just try and give a brief overview as to what we're kind of seeing within each. Now you're going to see two graphs on each page. The top graph is employment. Now I would say it's employment not for this area but for the South East, East and East Midlands, for which we sit kind of partly within each. We can't get absolute up-to-date data on specific employment for the occupational groups unless we go to the look at the regional stuff. But what we've found is it does give us a trend as to what's actually happening locally, so it is meaningful. The graph on the bottom is job postings. Now you're going to see a few of these going down, which obviously with COVID-19 people haven't been recruiting, so you know that's perhaps what you'd expect. There are a few but the trend, and we'll kind of highlight those as well. I would suggest you look at the scale on the left hand side of the graphs as well, just to give you an impression as to the kind of volume of opportunities that there are out there. There's a little table on the right hand side, top right. That is the top occupations that have been in demand. There's a few little comments. There are some kind of pathways that employers have kind of stated they prefer or look for.
Very sorry, Paul, to interrupt you. Some people, including myself, I think we can't see beyond the digital skills and vacancies slide.
No, that's because I haven't moved it on yet.
Oh, that's okay, sorry.
That's okay, no problem. It's a fair question. Fair question. And then on the bottom, you'll actually see the top 5 core competencies that have been asked for within each kind of occupational group. There you go, right. So, we'll start with business operations. It's by far the biggest area where there is demand. Employment kind of within the regions has been creeping up. Now we'll probably see, like I say, a little bit of a dip, I think, in that as we kind of go through. But if you actually look at the job postings, yes, that's been going down, but it's starting to put the brakes on a little bit. And we suspect that will start to come up quite quickly once we come out of lockdown. The most business operations, we're talking about here about administration, management, human resources, marketing, purchasing, that kind of thing. They are interesting roles for people to do because they are transferable from different sectors. So you can imagine if you've got, if you take a career in human resources, that could be used in a logistics company, it could be used in an engineering company, it could be used in retail, it could be used anywhere. So they are quite interesting roles to actually investigate for young people to make them a little bit more robust and a little bit more kind of, lots of career options. But as I say, just a little bit slow at the moment with COVID-19. We then look at the logistics specific, and I stress, when I say specific, these are just jobs that are related particularly to logistics. Business operations is related to logistics as well, as is engineering. But these ones are just the logistics specific ones, and we have seen a kind of a drop in employment. Now the interesting thing there is that's because of us leaving the EU. We've had a whole bunch of people disappear, and so when the employment numbers were done back in September, there were some big gaps. So the job postings, you'll notice, are on the up and have increased, and that's partly to fill those gaps. I would say it's difficult for young people to certainly go into the driving professions. There's lots of reasons for that. The businesses tend to look for 2 years experience, and the age can be a barrier simply because of insurance purposes. That is something the industry is trying to address. They do want to do things. One of the things they are doing is looking at bringing people into the business with a career path to actually head towards that. So there are options certainly on the logistics side to actually help and support that. As I say, there are other occupational groups within logistics. We had a meeting with John Lewis last week across at Milton Keynes. Most of you will have probably driven past all the kind of big sheds they've actually got on that site there. They struggle to recruit people just before Christmas. And they mainly think it's mainly because of the perceptions that people have got about the logistics sector. There are lots of great opportunities within that sector. There really are, especially on automation and engineering, data analysis, digital, lots of things like that. So it's certainly worth kind of investigating and understanding a bit more. You can't help but notice the number of sheds that we've got around the place. You know, we are in the centre of the country. We're ideally located. We are the kind of core of logistics within this country, and that will continue to be the case. And so there will be plenty of opportunities kind of out there. Digital, another big one. Employment is up. Job postings are starting to rise, starting to come back again. Certainly programmers and developers are much required in everywhere really, but there's plenty of other roles as well, like the data mining, data analysts, that kind of thing, network support, all these kind of roles. It will continue to increase. In fact, it will multiply quite quickly, we believe. We've got some quite high-tech companies coming to this area. There is a big demand, and lots of businesses are adopting digital in lots of different ways. So that will continue. So plenty of opportunity. I have to say, proportionally, underrepresentation of women within this area, within this sector, and BAME isn't particularly great either. And the industry is quite keen to actually change that perception and try and encourage more people into the sector. One thing I would say to you as well, most of these jobs do not go into specialist digital companies. Over 60% of them go into conventional type businesses that we probably all recognise. Health and care. I mean, you'll see fairly flat lines on the employment, and in fact increases slightly. I think we all appreciate the role of health, the NHS in particular, probably more than we've ever done. There's always been shortages in the sector. It's just now that they've kind of been highlighted even more now. And so big demand certainly on health, certainly on care. That's both residential and people who are kind of home based. And it's expected and anticipated that will continue to rise. We do have an aging population. They will need looking after. I say they, I mean we will need looking after. So, you know, it's important that we actually keep this pipeline of young people coming into this sector, and there's some great opportunities within it. There really are. The sector has also recognised the fact that entry paths sometimes haven't been as great as they could be, and they're actually changing those now. And so there are levels kind of 4 and 5 and things like that where people can kind of come into and work their way through. They're obviously big on apprenticeships as well in terms of trying to kind of push that. Education. It's kind of really as per kind of health and care really. There is a big demand. We have kind of a bit of an aging workforce as well in some areas. So primary school teachers, teaching assistants, STEM and English teachers in secondary schools, much in demand. We've got an increasing population in the area, and with that will come more demand as well. So plenty of opportunity there. Manufacturing, people might be quite surprised by the increase of employment in the region, on the regions. It is leading the way a little bit on the recovery, I have to say. Over the last 2 months, we have started to see an increase in the number of manufacturing jobs and roles out there. And that's a trend that looks to continue. We have a lot of food production here in this area. And obviously that's remained fairly buoyant throughout COVID, but also high performance technology. So everything through from Formula One teams through to aerospace, high tech stuff. We've got microchip manufacturers here in the area as well. Lots and lots of different kind of roles and opportunities within that sector. Financial. we do have some big financial companies in this area, people like Santander and Barclaycard and Nationwide, organisations like that. But I have to say the bulk of the roles being offered in the financial occupational group are either in the smaller kind of accountancy businesses, some in banks, not a huge amount, I've got to be honest, but some in banks. But the bulk of them are actually in businesses where they're actually looking for financial controllers, financial management, and that kind of thing. So big need for bookkeepers and accountants. And again, it's anticipated that will grow. Again, this is a particular area where there is an aging workforce. Sales and customer service. Now, what we're talking about here is more business to business sales as opposed to retail. And again, there is a big need here. Ironically, the best people who make best salespeople are usually the cheeky so-and-sos you get at school. And the gift of the gab and having confidence, etc., is one of the main things here to kind of help a person. It will accelerate and it will kind of grow quite rapidly on the job postings once we start to come out of lockdown. Businesses have given us that indication. They will be searching for people to kind of come into these roles. And again, apprenticeships might play quite a key part in this as we kind of take things forwards. We're already getting inquiries from businesses about apprenticeships, so that's an encouraging sign. Engineering, seeing a slight downturn on the employment. You can see there, manufacturing and engineering has been slightly hit with COVID as a whole. It depends what you're making. If you're making motor vehicle parts or you're making aerospace parts for civil aircraft, yeah, you're going to get hit. But lots of other areas have been quite buoyant. You see this is kind of slightly slowing down. Again, it's an aging workforce challenge, but there's a lot of need for maintenance technicians, mechanical engineers. A lot of it is to do with robotics and mechatronics, but certainly here in this area, we have a lot of requirement for testing and design. We obviously have the Formula One teams and things like that. But there's also a lot of businesses like Marla and Cosworth and people like that in the area, Vauxhalls as well, where they actually do have a need. As I say, though, aging workforce as well is quite a challenge. Representation, kind of gender balance is improving, but it needs to improve a lot more. And lots of opportunity for young women here in this particular kind of area. It's a similar story in construction as well, to be honest with you. You can see the numbers have kind of dropped over the years. That's more to do with more efficient kind of building methods and the way things are done. And there's a lot of fewer people, but doing a lot more. However, like I said before, we are starting to see lots and lots of inquiries for trades in particular. So plumbing, electricians, carpenters, have just come into the top 200 and are going up the list very, very quickly. Quantity surveyors, architects, so some of the higher skilled jobs, certainly construction managers as well, that kind of thing. Big demand. Now, this is just going to go one way, and that's up. The green economy will drive more jobs, so you'll have seen the various government announcements about this kind of thing in bits and pieces. Lots and lots of need for kind of things like ground heat source pumps and solar and all these kind of things. There'll be lots and lots of different roles in those things, insulation as well. But also we have some large building projects in the area. So we have HS2 on the west of the area going through South Northampton, Milton Keynes, kind of. In fact, they've actually set up their headquarters in Milton Keynes for the stretch of line kind of going through the patch. So that's a company called EKFB. They are quite keen to work with schools and also young people and get them on board. We've got the East-West Rail Link, which was announced a few weeks ago. So once work starts on that, there will be opportunities there. And we've got the small task of building 1 million homes between Oxford and Cambridge by 2050. And a lot of those are going to be in our area, especially Central Beds and Northamptonshire. So there will be plenty of opportunities there as well, kind of going forwards. Service occupations. Now, whilst we've seen a kind of drop in employment, interesting enough, job postings have been going up. One of the reasons is leaving the EU again. Sorry to sound like a broken record, but it certainly has had an impact. But obviously, you know, the drop also has been due to the closure of offices, and so there's been less demand for these kind of roles. However, cleaners have been in demand greatly, as you can well imagine, as has security. This will recover a little bit, that's for sure, once people kind of do come back to their offices and we start to see come back. I'm not entirely sure it'll get back to the numbers it was at, but it will come back to a certain degree. Accommodation. Nobody likes to see a graph like we've got at the top there. I mean, you see the huge increase that there was there between 2018 2019. There are questions as to whether that was sustainable anyway. This will bounce back. There's no question of that. It will not get back to the numbers that it was at, and if it does, it will take a long time, but it will bounce back. And you know, there's things that we've seen in there. For example, chefs, you always used to be in our top 25 job postings. In fact, it was 19th before COVID. It's now 117th. You know, that's the kind of impact that it's had there. So there will be some opportunities there kind of coming through, but just at the moment, obviously less so. Places like Luton, you know, very dependent on the airport, has a big impact on the food and accommodation side. One of the questions I had was, you know, do we know when the airport will reopen? Simple answer to that is no. A lot of that will be driven by where people can actually go in the other countries. You will have read all the stories as much as I have that most of Europe is way behind on vaccinations compared to where we are. And I think that will delay probably the opening of the airport or getting the airport back to full capacity anyway. So it will take time. It will take time. Similarly, retail, hair and beauty, the hardest hit occupational group by COVID-19 is where we've seen the most redundancies in the area. You know, there is definitely going to be less in the high street after lockdown. We've seen the big stores closing and things like that. So that's a major challenge. The trend was reducing on retail before COVID-19. You know, we all see less people in supermarkets, serving in supermarkets. That trend was carrying through, and retail was in trouble anyway. It's a similar story to hair and beauty as well. There was, and this is the industry sector reporting this, that they felt the bubble was about to burst. There was just too many on the high street. Now that said, you know, there's still demand out there for people to join the sector. So, you know, we'll have to see what happens when it kind of comes back. The hairdressers certainly will be very busy to start with, that's for sure. Well, not from me, obviously, but from lots of other people. And, you know, it'll be interesting to see how that breaks back. Our high streets will look completely different after this, that's for sure. Probably a lot more accommodation actually in our high streets. But, you know, the hair and beauty will come back to a certain degree. We'll quickly through some of the other quick sectors. Legal has stayed robust really all the way through. Lawyers have always been in demand. That will never change with our legal system. Automotive service, interesting one this. Technicians service, employment's been going up. We've actually seen job postings kind of reduce a little bit, but we think they're going to start coming back up again, simply because there is a bigger demand now for second-hand vehicles. People are looking to actually go in cars rather than public transport short term. Hopefully that trend will kind of die away. There is also the thing that we're driving a lot more electric cars, and electrification is causing problems with the workforce because you need different sets of skills. We have an aging workforce. And if ever there was a sector which is disproportionately gender biased, this is it. We did some research the other day, 99% male. That's totally unacceptable in this day and age. So lots of opportunities there for women to actually kind of work within the sector. Utilities. this will increase. Lots of changes with green technology, lots of changes with digital and things like that will force this. I've already mentioned heat source pumps, solar, that kind of thing. There's going to be a big demand here. So these are very much like a technician kind of level. There will be plenty of opportunity kind of taking things forwards. Real estate, house market stayed fairly buoyant, certainly in our area. Be interesting to see what happens. People maybe not working in London so much, working from home, staying around here, need rooms, extra rooms on houses, things like that, moving, lots of different changes going on. So again, plenty of opportunities there. So roles within support services, the social kind of support services, social services, they remain in demand. And again, there is opportunity there. So somebody's got a bent on helping and supporting people. That might be a great way to do it. Less so on childcare. We had seen a downward trend before COVID-19. That has continued. There's obviously a lot more people working from home, so less requirement. Although, judging from what I've heard of homeschooling, I think most people would gladly have some childcare. We're not too sure about the longer impact on this as to what will happen. I mean, if you look at the number of jobs there, I mean, it's kind of dropped quite dramatically, but there's still opportunities. So again, there will be some jobs there, maybe not so many as before. Sports and leisure kind of has been dropping for years. Few job postings, kind of a bit of a rally in 2018, 2019, but again, it's dropped away. Again, I think it will recover. It will get back up to 2019 levels once we come out of lockdown. Again, it might be a bit slow. Animal care, employment still quite buoyant. It dropped off again 2020. It will come back again. But look at the numbers. They're not huge. There's not lots and lots of opportunities here. And agriculture has seen an increase. Again, this is COVID-19 and leaving the EU. We have lost a lot of workers, fairly low skill workers, actually on farms. But that said, we do have an aging workforce in the management side on farms, and it is changing. It is becoming more technical, more digital. And so there will be some needs there. So if somebody, again, has a desire to do this, I would encourage them. I really, really would. There will be some opportunities here. So I'll finish off with a statement I always make about this. I'm showing you the picture as to where the opportunities are, but I would always say if somebody's got a burning desire or a talent to do something, then they should do it. Find something you love doing, get paid for doing it. It's not going to be work. So get that combination together. That's fine. We would always urge young people to be patient. By all means, shoot for the moon, but just be realistic about the time scale it might take to get there. Don't expect everything on your first job. And the other thing I would say to young people is plan your first step and see where it takes you. I personally wouldn't make long-term plans because the roles and jobs are changing completely. Forget this statistic about 65% of jobs have not been created yet. That's rubbish. Most jobs, most new jobs are versions of old jobs, but more digital, technical stuff within them. About 10% of new jobs. I mean, my job that I'm in now, that didn't exist 10 years ago. It does now. So there are new roles coming through, but it will not be the 65% that get quoted. Most of you know where I am. You can always contact me if you need to. We do have a web page with all the labour market information on. We try and keep these slides on there and we refresh them every quarter. So by all means, go and have a look. But if I've behaved myself well enough today, hopefully I'll come back and do something similar again in the future. Okay, and that was me.
Thank you so much. That was really useful, and we've got lots of questions for you.
Oh dear.
A bit of a echo. I'm sorry about that. Right. So if we start with questions during this session, and then we can also see you have covered most of the questions that we had that were pre-attendance. One is, will there be a version sent out that can be shared with young people, or do you have something that is suitable to share with young people?
Yeah, I did actually say at the beginning of the presentation, yes, there will be. There will be.
Perfect. And there's a question, is there any data within these sectors on the amount of opportunities for those with learning difficulties or disabilities, and any statistics about how many with learning difficulties or disabilities are able to get employment?
For the last part of that, yes, there is statistics on that, and that's something that we've been working on as part of our new skills strategy. We actually do have an initiative on the go at the moment, which is our SEND community of practice, and we're working with an organisation called Track NN, who are trying to drive more employer engagement to be able to offer people with learning difficulties or disability into employment. I've literally just seen a draft of something this afternoon to show some 30-minute videos that they're going to put together with businesses, with questions and answers and that kind of thing, which will be available to everybody. But it is something we are quite passionate about. I have to say, we have looked at statistics. Compared to the national average, we outperform the national average. That said, there are cold spots, and we can do more. And we need to do more. So it's something very close to my own heart, and it's something that we will push through. So whoever that was who made that comment, if you want to contact me directly, etc., I'll make sure that you get some information on that.
As an addition to that question, someone asked if you know of particular employers that are willing to work with those with learning difficulties. I mean,
there are a lot about. We haven't got a definitive list on it. It would depend on perhaps where you are geography wise, but at the end of the day, businesses will employ people because they need people. What we need to do is make sure that those businesses, when they start to think about employing people, go to it with an unconscious bias and remove all these unconscious bias issues that they perhaps have, because, and make sure they understand where they can go to get help and support and actually making that happen. So, yeah, I mean, maybe we could actually kind of go towards a listing businesses, asking businesses to list if they're kind of positively trying to encourage people with learning difficulties into work. Yeah, why not showcase them? The one thing I would say, there is a list of disability confident businesses on the government website that you can have a look at. It will be a little bit difficult, I think, to probably isolate those just to this area. That's the only thing. But I will make a note of that, and let's see if that's something we can actually look to in the future. That would seem like a very good idea to me.
Great. I've got another question from Dee asking if you have access or able to give access to some national labour market information.
I can do. It would depend what you're asking for. You're probably better off speaking to the National Careers Service on that. I would think they've certainly got some statistics, etc., which are readily available. But certainly we tend to focus just really on this area.
That's great. We had a query about a list of training opportunities in the area that could meet the needs of some of these new roles. I'm not sure if Francis wants to elaborate on that. You can unmute if you'd like to.
Okay. Sorry, I lost the picture. I clicked on the link and lost the picture. The perfect timing. It was just more about, obviously, with these new sort of roles that are coming into play and how all these companies are adapting. Are they offering local opportunities to train in those specific areas? So, obviously anything eco, like, kind of like in the building areas, how they're adapting and changing. Are they offering training in this area?
I think you'll find the pathways will start to become available. I mean, at the moment, if you look at that area and you look at the opportunities for apprenticeships, there are none. And that's because the standards don't exist.
Yeah, I've looked.
Yeah. So there's always a bit of catch up here. what we intend to do, and part of this came out of the strategy, writing the strategy, was that we're going to start to create things. We're going to create a web page for each of these occupational groups, and what we will try and capture are the pathways on that, to actually go into these kind of roles locally. It's a massive task, and we won't be able to do it overnight. We know that. But if you take the logistics sector, for example, it's appalling at advertising the different ways that people can actually get into the different sectors. Some of the businesses are brilliant at it. Some of them are terrible, and they'll be the first to admit it. So we need to kind of showcase and make those relationships. The other thing is we need to educate the businesses as well to a certain degree, because we want entry paths into the businesses. We want more use of traineeships, supported internships, supported apprenticeships, that kind of thing. So we need to encourage more of that to happen, and then showcase them.
Thank you.
Thank you. We also had a question, if you know of any SMEs that are actually recruiting apprentices at the moment.
Oh, off the top of my head, no. I would encourage you to go and have a look on our website on the labour market information page. We do have a map on there of apprenticeship vacancies that are being advertised through the government website. I have to be honest with you, the take up of apprenticeships with SMEs has always been poor, and much lower than the bigger companies. The bigger companies have an incentive because they actually have to pay this apprenticeship levy, and the only way they get their money back is if they take on apprentices. I think with a lot of the smaller businesses, the bureaucracy, the paperwork, the financial incentives as well, just don't work for them at the moment. And it works for some brilliantly, and it depends on the type of job. But for an awful lot, it doesn't really. And so, again, that has been identified by DfE. They know they've got a problem there. They know they've got a challenge, and they've got to do something about it. Off the top of my head, no. You actually have to look on the apprenticeship listings, I'm afraid.
Great, thank you for that. I think there's a couple of other questions. I don't know if Emma wanted to ask one. While I'm waiting for her to get to the next one on the list, I just was going to mention that actually, from seeing a previous LMI session that you ran, Paul, we were inspired at Aspire Hire to create a couple of videos. So we actually have 2 animations that we produced, and they've just been launched on our website. So I actually sent an email earlier this week about the employability one, but we also now have a digital skills one, which was in the pipeline, but it's now finally on our website. So they're very short and friendly and easy introduction to it for any students. I think someone had another question. Emma, did you want to ask the next question on the list?
Yeah, so there's one question that sort of says, what involvement do we have with larger recruitment agencies for young people locally or nationally? So I'm guessing seeing, is there much link up with recruitment agencies and kind of getting young people into work?
Well, the recruitment agencies are driven by the businesses.
Yeah.
So they're really the kind of mechanism, if you like, the conduit to doing the recruitment. So I think the focus needs to be on the businesses, and that's what we will be doing what we have been doing and what we'll be doing going forwards. I think there also is a realization from the businesses, we've got a tight labour market. They need to bring new blood in, I'm starting to see some changes from businesses on mindsets with that. So I'm quite optimistic, I have to be honest with you, going forwards. I really am.
Cool, thank you for that. I don't know if anyone else had any other questions they wanted to ask kind of while we've got Paul here. I think we've covered most of the kind of the pre-session questions that were sent in.
I mean, just whilst we're on the subject of offers and things coming along, we are going to run 4 broadcasts. We ran 3 broadcasts before Christmas, which are still available on our website and the Teacher Resources page. So the 3 that we did before Christmas were about opportunities in the area. The second one was what employers look for, what they interested in, like skills and that kind of thing, attributes. And then the third one was about pathways, just trying to explain a bit more about what the pathways were and what options were available. This next 4, we're actually going to focus them on occupational groups. So we've got one each evening, running at 5 till 6 o'clock at night. They're open to basically everybody, so parents, youngsters, teachers, anybody. So on the 12th, we're going to do health and care. On the 3rd, sorry, this is April, week 1. 12th of April, we're going to do health and care. 13th, we're going to do engineering and manufacturing. 14th, we're going to do digital, and 15th, we're going to do logistics. And the idea will be, it'll be a similar kind of format, very short presentation from me, and much shorter than what you've just seen now. I mean, literally 5 minutes. And then we have a panel of business people, most of which will have opportunities. Who might be offering apprenticeships, who might be offering actual jobs, that kind of thing. And they will take Q&As and it'll be live. And so we will do that. We will record it as well. So if you want to use that in the schools afterwards, you can. Again, we'll put it up on our website. So we're just starting to get the businesses lined up and the organisations lined up. I've posted out the health one yesterday, and the businesses have just flooded in. In fact, I don't know how many. We're going to have a ridiculously sized panel, I think. So hopefully that will be a benefit. If they're successful, we had over 300 odd people attend the other broadcasts each night. So the more of these we can do, the better, I think. And we'll try and make that easier for you to engage with.
That is great news. So is the best way to find out and sign up for those from your website?
No, what's going to happen is I'm going to send you an email.
Perfect. That'll be even easier, because then we can include it in all of our post. We always send an email after these webinars to all the people who've registered. So yeah, we can send those to them.
We're just waiting. Speakers for Schools are going to host it for us because of the safeguarding. They've got everything in place. So as soon as they've actually set up the links for the registrations, then we'll get that information out to you. That's
perfect. Well, we're just about out of time. Some people are saying thank you. Actually, and some people are needing to leave. Are there any last minute questions? Doesn't look like there are. Thank you so much, Paul. It was really informative, and now there's lots of interesting things that we can send out within that the post-event email. Included with that, we will have an evaluation. We do appreciate any feedback that we get, and also to give us more ideas about others that we can offer. And the next one happens to be on apprenticeships. Actually, we've got a panel, and that is the 20th of April, but more information will come out about that. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for all your kind comments. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Okay. Bye for now.